Do you remember Pig Latin? Could you speak Pig Latin?
Ik patently.
I could do simple words like that, but I knew people that like could have full blown long.
Okay, ude. Say Erd's way.
You know some words.
I could do some words.
Oh, I got close. I could not pick that up. I could pick up basic.
With a little bit of, it's kind of like cursive. I can do it if I really try.
You think and you focus on it.
I think and focus on it. I can't. I used to be really good at it.
There's no more Pig Latin, is there?
What's that? I don't know. The kids still. You'll have
they
to.
Use
you'll
words
have to ask
that
them.
We don't even know.
You got the Riz. You got
push mid. Push. So I don't know.
Is a thing or was a thing. I don't think it's a thing anymore.
That's what I do when I want people to shut up.
That's actually what I do with the cat. Yeah.
We're old.
Yeah. Welcome to A Spirited Life. I'm Mark.
I'm Christine.
This week we're going to talk a little bit about day hikes. What are day hikes? Why we're exploring them now, and give you a couple examples of ones we've done or ones that we're thinking about doing.
Our whiskey of the week is a whiskey that we picked because it lines right up with where we had our first significant day hike. Then we'll also talk about what filled our spirit for the week.
We want to live a spirited life. We're documenting our journey towards financial independence while balancing that with living in the present and enjoying our time in the journey. While we want to work towards financial independence, there's no guarantee for what tomorrow will bring. So we don't want to wait to enjoy our lives because tomorrow isn't promised. We want to share our journey to help keep ourselves intentional and accountable, and we invite you to come along with us as we work towards living a spirited life. So every week we like to pick a whiskey that goes along with the theme for our topic for the week. Christine, what do we have for this week?
This week we have Yellowstone Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. This bottle is a OHLQ single barrel selection number 2. The proof is 115.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so Yellowstone actually makes several different offerings. They have their regular base offering, which is 93 proof. And then if you do a single barrel selection, there are typically 2 proofs that those come in at 109 and 115 proof. That are the target proofs that they aim for. Yellowstone does have a few other things that they do. They have a limited edition that they offer that's usually in some sort of wine finish that they offer each year. That's usually a limited release. But in this particular case, we selected this one because one of our first major day hikes that we did with friends of ours out at Yellowstone, was at Yellowstone, and specifically, we went to visit the falls that are, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see this little picture here of the falls. Our day hike actually went right by the upper and lower falls, which was great. And it was really a great hike. So that's why we picked this whiskey.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's get out the nose.
Let's go ahead and let's get into the nose.
Sweet caramel.
Yes, sweet caramel. You know what? It almost comes off with a bit of a nose of like, if you open a box of Cracker Jacks.
I was just going to say caramel corn.
Yeah, if you open a box of Cracker Jacks or caramel corn.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason I say Cracker Jacks, there is just a little bit of nuttiness on there, too.
I get it, yeah. That I got caramel corn, and then once you said Cracker Jack, I'm like, yep.
But, man, yeah, that really just is caramel corn right on the nose, like a fresh open box of Cracker Jacks or a fresh popcorn ball, so. Yeah, that's really nice.
Get a little burn.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
don't stick your nose in too far.
Yeah, the 115 proof on this definitely does come through. The ethanol really jumps out on the glass here. Really going and getting your nose into it. You don't want to get too far into that. So
burn you up. Oh yeah, but that caramel corn.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty, let's go ahead and let's get into it. Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, wow. That proof really hits.
Oh, it's still going.
Even at 115 proof, like that is, it is very proof spicy in terms of heat all the way through. My palate is going to have to acclimate to this.
Oh my gosh,
Holy cow.
My esophagus.
Yeah.
It's a burn.
The Kentucky hug is deep on that. I do find it kind of funny that Yellowstone is made in Kentucky rather than out in like Wyoming or Montana or one of the other states where Yellowstone is located at. But if you want a distillery who's actually located out there, you could take a look at Wyoming whiskey for their wheat or rye whiskeys that they offer. And they do make different offerings that are actually aligned with the parks that are out out west. So they have made ones that were aligned with Yellowstone, and I think that they also made one that was aligned with Grand Teton.
Yes, which I'm desperate to find.
So we may have to see if we can find that at some point.
I have people on the lookout too. It's a little tricky for us.
Yeah.
But yes.
All right, let's go ahead and let's see if the palate's acclimated. Maybe do a little bit of a second sip.
Caramel candy.
Caramel candy sweetness for sure. A little bit of like sourness in the mid to late finish. Not bad. Just like, probably a little bit of the oak and age showing a little bit on that.
Okay. I love that.
Overall,
I get a corn. Sorry, I totally interrupted your overall.
No, go ahead.
I also get like corn pops.
Yeah, I'm not personally getting that yet, but I think it's still because my palate is maybe still acclimating a little bit to it. But I could see where you're getting that, especially because we were getting such that Cracker Jack nose of like corn and nuttiness and caramel. I could definitely see where, depending on where your senses are at, that the corn pops note would be, pretty straightforward. Sweet corn.
I'm taking baby sips. It is.
I mean, it really is, and I like. It's funny because we have this sitting up on a shelf that is dedicated to out west, things like that, and so I don't always remember because it actually sits up over our head in the Explorer's Lounge. So I don't often remember to reach for this bottle. But yeah, overall it's nice. It's enjoyable. It's just like for one reason or another, it's just coming across very ethanol forward.
Got legs.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely has legs that you can
Viscousy.
see. It's pretty viscous overall.
Yeah, it's not something you're gonna chug.
There is some dark fruit notes that I'm getting also that I would call out on the like early to mid palate. Now that my palate's starting to acclimate a little bit more, I'm starting to get a few more of those different types of notes. Almost like a bit of like prune or fig type notes in the early portions. And then that carries through kind of into the mid palate, and then it kind of transforms into that little bit of like sour oakiness.
I was just gonna say I just burped, and when I burped, it tasted like fig.
That happens, and that's
sure
actually
if that's the content and the quality that you're looking for, but
well. Here's the thing, like
real life.
That is a part of what happens, and actually, that's one of the reasons why it's good to go back after you've had a first sip, because the aroma actually comes back up. Because the aroma actually comes back up your esophagus and changes your perception of the smell, which is why second and third sips will taste significantly different at times because you're actually having a different overall experience in your olfactory senses.
First one went through and wake up, taste me. This is what it tastes like. And you're like, what? And then the second one goes, oh, wait, that kind of, I'm ready for that. And the third one's like, it's like after you had a cup of coffee in the morning and you're like, oh, I'm awake. I'm getting it. Yeah, I got this now.
Yeah. Palate is waking up. I didn't have a precursor whiskey for this either. So I didn't wake the palate up before this. Shame on me. All right. One final sip. See if there's anything else that we kind of pull out of there. Back to the caramel notes now. I am getting a little bit of that corn pops type note on like early to mid palate. Yeah. Yep. And then now a little bit, that sourness has almost turned a little bit into like flat Verners. Right?
Oh, yeah. No, I got it now.
Yeah.
I'm a little disappointed.
So I'm sorry that you're disappointed. So overall, probably not a whiskey that we reach for regularly often, but I certainly don't regret buying this particular bottle, and it certainly goes along, with our theme of exploring something new and different. And in that, we're going to be starting to take a look at doing day hikes a little bit more, and so let's go ahead and let's delve in on that a little bit. When you think of what a day hike is, how would you describe that to somebody?
It is something that you could easily go and do within the daylight hours of a day. So it's either like you go somewhere or hike for like 4 or 5 miles or less or more, depending on your ability. And then you're usually wrapped up. You're back to where you started from by the end of that daylight time, depending on where you feel comfortable. Some could go into dusk, some don't go into dusk. And then you wrap it up, and then you either go home or you hang out, and then you go home.
Okay. It's a good thing that you added that extra detail, because when you said it's something that you just go and do in a day, I was ready to be like, so I can go hike to the DMV?
You could.
I mean, I guess you could actually. You could do a day hike to the DMV, I guess.
I think it depends on to what level of your hiking and your adventurous is. You could go to your local city park if it has woods and go hiking if that's something that you've never done. And that's like, ooh, I just spent half a day doing this.
Well, sure.
Or if you're at a different level, you could go to, like we have a national park kind of near us. So you could go and spend a day there hiking and then pack your lunch. So it all depends on where you are personally in your hiking comfort levels and abilities.
Yeah. But if I'm at the DMV, I'm going to be sitting there standing in line. I'm going to be hiking 1 foot at a time.
Listen, that's an adventure unto itself.
That's true. That's true. But I do like what you said about that in terms of it is a little bit different than maybe other hikes that people are maybe used to. And I think probably a lot of folks are probably used to doing something that looks like this. When I think of a day hike, I think of it's something where we are intentionally going to go pick a path and we're going to go spend at least a few miles going and walking on that path and things like that. It's probably going to be out in nature. It's probably going to be at some sort of park or something along those lines, things like that. And it probably is going to entail like, some sort of amount of getting out for at least a significant portion of the day, like at least like the morning or the afternoon, if not more.
I have another qualifier for a day hike.
Okay.
You either bring your own water or you plan to stop at different spots to get water.
Okay.
So it's not like one of those where you don't bring in, like, I'm just going willy-nilly with nothing on me into the woods for a while.
Right. You are intentionally going to be spending a significant amount enough of time that you're going to need to bring some stuff with you. You're not just going to go without anything, without any sort of a pack or any sort of food or any sort of water or anything along those lines.
Yeah.
So you're going to be spending at least a little bit of time there. And I think that's probably a little bit easier than like where people go and they do overnight hikes, where they do something where maybe they hike for multiple days and they are going in, they're hiking, they're taking all of their food and water and their shelter with them in a lot of cases. Or like a through hike where maybe you're stopping it periodically, points along the way, but it's multiple days, potentially weeks or months together. One of the things that's important about this is it is just a single day kind of thing. And you're going out from like a single day spot, right? So you're going out either from your house or you're going out maybe if you're on vacation from your hotel or your cabin or something along those lines. And you're going out and you're doing that thing and then you're coming back to that same location at the end of the day.
The goal is not to sleep in the woods.
Right. You're not trying to sleep in the woods. If you end up sleeping in the woods, you probably messed up.
And you bring like snacks and maybe lunch, but you don't need to think of multiple meals.
Yes.
Shelter.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like you're not necessarily worried about bringing a shelter. You're not necessarily worried about bringing multiple meals that you're going to be cooking. You are planning on getting back to wherever you started from, most likely in that case. Or if it is like a point-to-point hike, it really is just that you're only going to be hiking for that one day and you've got somewhere else to rest. And then that's going to be the end of it.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about why are we interested in this now? Why are these appealing to us now? Why are we starting to talk about that, maybe starting to look at emphasizing these a little bit more?
So for me, it's twofold. There's two reasons, kind of the why now for us. One, it's to get outside and do stuff adventure-wise without taking a whole weekend or long weekend camping trip that involves a little more prep, cleanup, setup type thing. The other is I have this weird fantasy. It's not really weird. Other people do it too. But I have this fantasy of doing like a long weekend hike in, hike out somewhere, camping type thing. So this is a good starter hike to get me into that hiking a lot, to see if I really want to do it, and then to prep my body if I want to go longer.
Yeah, I think you hit on probably two things right now for us. The easy to do, right? I can plan a day hike. I can actually, if I decide, I can wake up in the morning and be like, hey, it's Saturday, and we can work this in, right? We can figure out how to go do a hike or things like that. Or we can wake up on Saturday and go, hey, what are we doing tomorrow? Let's go do a day hike tomorrow. Where do you want to go?
Mm-hmm.
And very quickly we can just, have that planned out, work that into our day. And it's something, to your point, number two, where we can get outside, get some fresh air, go touch some grass, those types of things. And starting to build up, our health a little bit in terms of hiking, those types of things. We're not going to go in and do like a big 10-mile hike just out of nowhere. Like,
No, thank you.
probably could. We probably would not feel great afterwards. It would probably would not be good at all. So we know that we want to build up to that. And you talked about, hey, eventually we think it might be cool to do one of those hike in, hike out.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take our shelter, let's do all that. But this allows us to get practice, allows us to go explore and figure out if this is something that we really like to do before we go making a more significant commitment that way in terms of time and money and things like that and experience. So potentially very cool. But like, if you're not cool with doing a 5 or 6 mile hike and packing in your food with you, or taking a meal with you and cooking while you're out on that hike, or even potentially going and looking for water or those types of things, to run through, like, the filtration system, like Life Straw or Sawyer filter or something along those lines. Like, you got to build up to that and get some practice and figure out if that's cool, right? Figure out how to do that. Figure out if you actually enjoy that. And if you don't, then you haven't invested like a whole ton of money and time into doing that without figuring out that, that whether you enjoy it or not, because you don't want to go spend potentially like hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on something that's not fun. That would kind of suck.
That would kind of suck. You also don't want to be like, yeah, I'm doing this 20-mile round trip thing and not hiking ever, and realizing that it sucks horribly and you're like stuck halfway in and you got to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least you dip your toe in with your little day hikes. You just dip it in.
This is how we're starting to do some of these things and build some of this stuff up in preparation to potentially do a bigger hike in, hike out type of thing. We've done a few different hikes already that I think fall into our classification for day hikes. We referenced the first one.
Our first one we did together was at Yellowstone with friends.
Well, it's funny. I think there's actually one before that I would talk about too.
Which
and
one
I
is
didn't even
that?
think about it until we were literally talking right now. Which is the one that
The
we
incline?
did where we all, well, the incline would count. The incline would count on that too. So that's a great point. So let's talk about the ones that kind of come to mind. So actually, I think that the incline is probably the first one that we did. And that one is pretty intense. We'll talk about that one. I was thinking about when we were in Ireland and we went to Howth and we almost killed our friend, which is a good reason to make sure that you're ready to go do a hike like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there obviously was the one that we've referenced at Yellowstone, which was our 5-mile hike along the Yellowstone Gorge.
I would have loved to know how far we hiked in Ireland. I didn't pay any attention to that.
I believe it was about a 3-mile hike, but it could have been longer.
Some elevation gain.
Yes, there was definitely some elevation gain. And then there was the one that we just did at Brandywine Falls.
Yep.
Not too long ago. So let's talk about the incline first, because I think you're right. I think that actually was kind of the first one that was more of a, hey, we're gonna go out and do a hike, and that one's unique.
That was very unique.
Yeah.
That was
So there is out in Colorado Springs, or actually Manitou Springs.
Yeah, yep.
There is a hill that's called the Incline that used to be a cogwheel train that went up the side of the mountain. And they took the cogwheel train out. They took the tracks out, but they left the cross beams for the track on the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this nice clear track that goes right up with all of these, the cross beams, the railroad ties, and people just started hiking it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the unique thing about this is that it actually is 1,000 feet of elevation gain in less than a mile. It's a pretty significant hike. It's a pretty significant thing that people do. The Air Force Academy is over in Colorado Springs, and the Air Force folks actually go and they run up those at times, and also run down, which let me tell you, is dang impressive. So
there's an Army base out there that does it too, though. That's their morning thing. They run up the incline and then they run down the switchbacks.
The switchbacks, yeah. So what was your experience like when we did that? Because I know I suggested that, hey, this might be something we do, everything like that. And y'all were like, all right, I guess we'll go for it.
Yeah, I think it was fine. We went to Colorado Springs, Denver, and Manitou with my brothers. So it was you, me, and my two brothers. And we like to do things and we like to challenge ourselves. So you suggested it, and we're like, yeah, let's do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we get there, and I remember driving up to it and just seeing like mountains, and I'm like, and then I just saw in the distance like this like one little track up into the mountain. I'm like, oh, was that what we're doing? Because I'm kind of afraid of heights. But once we got there, it was fun. We packed our stuff. We got like our coconut water and our snacks and our other beverages to help with electrolytes, because we're coming in from like the Midwest, like elevation. That was something our body was not fully ready for.
I think that was probably one of the mistakes that we made, which was we didn't give ourselves enough time to really acclimate to the elevation, because we had come in from Ohio and gone up, to basically Mile High area, and so quite a significant bit of elevation change. And the next day was the day that we decided that was going to be what we were going to do.
Yes.
So yeah, but it was challenging. It was tough.
It was hard. I remember starting it was great, the spacing of the ties, and it was a gain, but it wasn't like a serious like angle. You could probably explain later the percentage of like angle or whatever that we were on in the middle, but it was hard. Like, it was fun to go at first, and all of a sudden I remember I stopped at one spot, and I'm like sitting there because I like the beef jerky and everything in my backpack, and I'm like, what would I do if a bear came right now? And I'm just like, I just sit here.
Whatever happens.
But yeah, like the steepness of it, and looking out, I think that was, as we got higher up, that got tricky. I was like crawling, but like
so
to balance it all out.
Yeah, so the lower portions of the incline are a much lower grade, like overall. So by the time you get midway to the last quarter, the incline really starts to ramp up in terms of the grade, and it gets to a pretty significant grade where I was literally able to just crawl upwards, almost like, climbing stairs, like regular stairs. So the incline was at that point at least, I think, like 30 or 40% grade. It was very significant.
It was
and at times even more than that, like potentially like a 50 or 60% grade. Like, yeah,
it was hard, but it was great. Like, because we would stop, because we would have to stop because, one, we weren't in the best shape. Two, we were coming from Ohio to
with no acclimation.
Yeah.
Right.
So to catch our breath, we would stop, and you would just turn, and like you just saw all of like Colorado Springs. You could see part of the Air Force Academy and the Mantua Spring. Like, you saw all of it. It was the coolest thing to take in, just looking and seeing everything, and then turning around and seeing the angle that you were at, and then the false summit.
Yes.
Oh.
Looks like you're about to finish. Nope,
No.
not quite there. You still got like another 150, 200 yards at that point that you got to go. So, but yeah, I think one of the things that was really great, like by the time we got to the last quarter, I was doing about 15 to 20 ties at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would need to take a break because I was not in the best shape. Not that I am now, but, you know, it was one of those things where it was pretty taxing, especially having not been acclimated to it. But every time we would take a break, we'd sit down off on the side of the ties. So we were keeping the runway clear for people who were literally sometimes running up or at least walking up. But being able to take in the views while we were doing that was really cool. And just being able to see down, into the lowlands was pretty sweet. So, and then we had a running joke about the fact that there needed to be an ice cream.
A Sonic.
A Sonic. That's right.
Up at the
There needs
top.
to be a Sonic up at the top so we could get, ice cream
needed
or
something.
a slushie when we got to the top.
But but it was just getting to the top though was pretty coming over that edge was like holy crap.
Well,
I just went up that thing.
yes.
And not only that, but the views and just seeing what you actually just physically did is kind of empowering.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that is still probably one of my top 10 personal accomplishments. From a physicality standpoint, right? Like going and saying, yeah, I've done the Manitou Springs incline is still a big accomplishment for me. And what's funny is that when you get to the top, then you have to figure out, okay, how are you going to do the rest of the hike? Are you going to go back down or are you going to do the switchbacks? And if you go back down, it's a mile. But if you do, but it is that incline going down and it is steep. And so that can be pretty difficult. And so we opted for the switchbacks, which meant that we were going to do 3 more miles of hiking. But at that point,
those switchbacks were easy, man.
So easy on the way down.
They were just like, wee.
Yeah.
I think I remember the worst was that my brother was really freaked out that our parking pass or our how much we paid for parking. He was so
we were
going to
get a parking ticket.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but we didn't. We were back in time, and then we went and had a lovely lunch. It was great. But yeah, that one was definitely a good one. I think
that took several hours. I want to say all in.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we started that pretty early too because we knew that we wanted to get. What did we start? Like 9:30, 10 o'clock?
Yeah.
And then by the time we got back down, we went to lunch because it was lunch.
It was after lunchtime.
It was actually after lunchtime, which means it wasn't that busy, which was kind of nice.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was definitely a few hours. Definitely something that ate up a lot of our day, and then we went to Garden of the Gods afterwards.
Yeah, we did.
So and we did a hike around there. So we actually ended up doing 2 hikes in the same day. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, the Garden of the Gods hikes were a lot smaller.
Yes.
We did because we had a time crunch ish by the end of the day.
Well, because we needed to drive back up to Denver.
Yeah.
So
then we just kind of hung out, did some easy ones, climbed on some rocks, and drove back up to Denver. Yeah.
Yeah, but overall, a great experience. Highly recommended. If you're ever in the Colorado Springs area, go check out one. If you're into a challenge, Manitou Springs Incline, absolutely go do that. And if you want to get the view, but you don't think that you can do the incline itself, you can go up the switchbacks to at least get the view.
They also have, at least when we went there, they still had like it's not a train and it's not like a chalet, something that was driving people up.
It's
a train?
It's the cog train. It's a cog train.
So
it's one that runs parallel to that one that used to run up there. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I would love to go back one time and do it again and see.
Yeah, I would definitely need to work on getting in shape before we do that.
Just to see. Okay, so that was our number one.
So that was
way to start off hard.
Yeah. The next one I think to talk about is when we took our trip over to Ireland and we took a day trip out to the coast, and specifically to the East Coast. Because we were staying in Dublin, and so we took a light rail out to a town. And if you're from Ireland and I pronounced this wrong, I'm sorry, but I believe that the pronunciation is Howth or Hoth. And we decided to go check out the cliffs that they have there. And so that one was pretty interesting. We were traveling with friends of ours,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah, we went. It's like a little fishing village.
yes,
So we walked around that, and then I said, "Hey, there's this awesome path we could take around the cliffs."
yes, and so this was something that we had looked at. We knew that we could go check out the cliffs. We knew that we could potentially go do some hiking up there just to like see the cliffs and things like that. This one, I think we were not probably the least planned for in terms of the level of difficulty and things like that. As Christine talked about, we started out in the town, cute little fishing town. There's like one strip of like businesses, of like restaurants and shopping places and things like that. And then you just walk up the road. And that was the beginning of our hike, was literally walking through town.
Yeah.
And then we ended up, finding the trailhead and starting to do the hike, which was great. It was a lot of fun.
It was. It was actually surprisingly a steeper incline than I thought going into it.
Mm-hmm.
I think once we got going, that like it was a lot of like I would say rolling. So once you got up into the incline and up into the cliffs, the rest of the walk wasn't like a lot of elevation gain, but it was like there was like some dips and raises.
Yeah, it was very hilly. Most of the incline was at the beginning and then at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the two big spots that we had the incline. So we walked up a lot, and then once we were in the hills and we were following along the coast, as you said, we would go down through these little dips into like a little valley, and then you'd walk up a little bit, but really nothing crazy or challenging or anything like that. But it was interesting to see all of the different scrubland and all of the different paths that were set up there. But yeah, we went with our friends.
I just thought of another hike that we did.
Grand Canyon.
No.
Because we did that
King
too.
Arthur's Seat.
I was thinking about that too. If you wanted to consider that one as well.
Oh.
Yeah. So
was
you can.
No,
yeah. We'll talk about. We'll finish talking about Ireland, and you can just add that one in there. And we'll just say, oh yeah, and we also did this other hike. I don't know if that one really counts because that one was just like a mile.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Oh, it's fine. We'll just keep.
Yeah.
We'll just go with that, and then we'll go. This will be forever.
We can talk about
this
that.
Will be forever. Two of us going. Oh, I forgot we did that too. Oh shit, we did a lot.
Oh shit, that's right.
What do you mean this is new? This isn't new. Every now and then we get a bug up our butt.
But we decided to go hiking for miles on end.
Let's see how I could injure and maim my friends.
Yeah. Yeah. So we did the hike. And we're going, and by the time I think we were maybe like 2 hours into it, our friend asked us, "Is like, guys, how long is this?" We really did not prepare him for going and the way that we often do hiking, which is, hey, we're gonna go for a couple hours. Zach, we love you.
First of many times I've made Zach question my choices about going out into the wild.
Yes. So. Yeah, because hey, it's one of those things. It's getting Zach out into nature is an accomplishment. So, anyway, so I think we ended up finishing that hike. I think it ended up being about 3 hours or so, and then by the time we got to the top, again, stunning views, just absolutely beautiful views of the coast, everything like that. I remember it was basically like, okay, how do we get back down, or can we get lunch? And the place that was at the top was closed.
I remember, we were walking through some back communities to get a bus.
Yes, so there was a restaurant that was at the top of the mountain, but it was closed. And then we ended up having to walk, back through some neighborhoods, to be able to catch the bus, so that we could get back down. And then we had lunch.
Yes, it was tasty.
Yeah,
fish and chips is great.
Yeah. And it's seaside fish and chips, some of the best that I've ever had. So fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about this one. Let's talk a little bit about Yellowstone. So, went out for a trip again with friends of ours who live out in Utah, and we went up to a multi-day trip where we were staying at the park in Yellowstone. And we had a couple different options. You want to talk about our options for that and why we ended up picking this particular trail?
Yeah. So part of our planning, I wanted to do a realish hike. Never mind.
Real hike.
A real hike.
Yeah.
Not a fake hike. So in talking with our friends and planning this, part of what I wanted to do was go for a multi-mile hike. Yellowstone is very tourist friendly, where you can just park in a parking lot and you just walk like a little bit and then you see the sights. I wanted to get out into the wild-ish. So we are planning different hikes. One of the hikes that we decided to do was further north in Yellowstone. We got up there and we're like, ooh, the parking lot's empty. This could be really good. And then we got out of the car, walked over the trail, signs like bear activity, blah, blah, blah. And then there was just snow. I'll say this was the end of May, beginning of June. Again, forgetting higher elevations, Wyoming. Probably we're going to have snow. So we got in the beginning and we're like, oh, okay, is it just from being plowed? Like, is this where the snow? So our friend Aaron went in a little bit. He's like, no, that's still pretty deep most of the way through. We were not prepared for snow hiking.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that stuck out to me was us going, is that the trailhead?
Oh, that's right.
Because we couldn't even tell if we were actually at the trailhead or not, because it wasn't marked and it was so covered in snow that we couldn't see whether or not it was actually the trail.
Mm-hmm.
We assumed that it was, because it was the only area that kind of sort of had somewhat of a clearing that made sense to be a trail.
And it was right by the posting of watch out for bears.
And it was right by the posting and everything like that. And then there was still a foot of snow.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we went, we're not going to do that one. So I don't know how pulling up maps or in conversation, whatever.
This was the backup trail.
Okay.
We had two trails that we thought about doing and potentially do both of them, because the first one where we couldn't find the trailhead was only a couple miles. I want to say like 3.
Yeah. Okay, that's where it goes.
And had a really cool thing that we would have gotten to see.
Oh, an alpine lake, because I'd love to see an alpine lake.
Right, on that trail. And so it would have had a nice payoff, but it would have been worthwhile to do if we did that. If not, then we were going to do the backup trail. Or we could always add on the other trail if we felt like we were good to go and being able to do that.
So we ended up having to go to our backup trail.
So we ended up having to go to the backup trail. And this trail was, 5.5 miles?
Yes. Yeah. Ish. 5.5.
5.5 miles. It done as a loop. And we parked. There's a lot of places you could start this hike. We started up in like a high prairie was where we parked at the one end of the loop. We started on the trail, and we knew that this was going to be a pretty interesting trail, because we knew that there was going to be several points of interest for us to take a look at as we were going through this. And the fact that we were starting out essentially in a high prairie was pretty cool. And I think that that's one of the things that I enjoyed most about this particular hike, was that we ended up walking through, I think, about 4 different biomes.
So many. Yeah. It was. Well, and from what I learned when we passed people on the trail, we started off well, because we started on like the muddiest, most annoying part of the trail. So we still had our energy, still had our excitement going to get us through the muddiness of it.
Yeah. And as you talked about, we were there at the end of May, beginning of June, and things were still very wet. To your point, when we started doing that initial hike, the ground in that prairie was very wet, very muddy, everything like that as we worked through it. But it was still very, very beautiful. And then we went into...
I'm doing, my hand is like the prairie, the hills, and then we came down into geyser and mud pots.
Yeah, I was trying to remember if we did a little bit of alpine forest first. I thought it was a little bit of alpine forest, and then geysers and mud pots, and then sulfur lake, and then more alpine forest, and then the gorge.
I don't remember if it's alpine forest. I just, maybe prairie into alpine forest. I just remember the geysers and the mud pots. And then I remember the alpine forest, where I like did the weird woo 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 on a tree stump, trying to get around a big puddle of water. When I almost fell and I was holding on to the thing, tree sap. I just remember that Kim and I did it.
Oh, okay.
And then the gorge.
So yeah. Again, lots of different things to see and that were worth hiking in for, and I think it really matched what you were looking for. We did see a few folks I think we probably saw in most of the trail, in 90% of the trail, we saw 10 people.
Mm-hmm. It was the best because then people are like, oh, look, there's other people.
Yes.
I'm going the right way. There's people.
Yes. And so we definitely saw a couple people up in the high prairie.
Mm-hmm.
We saw a couple people when we were down in the alpine forest and mud pots area. We saw a couple more people who were coming the other direction. In the second part of the alpine forest, we saw a few others when we got to that caught up to us when we got to the gorge.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to see the lower and upper waterfalls, I think is what they're called.
Yep.
And things like that. And that's really where we started to see a few more people. And then as we approached Artist Point, that's where obviously we saw a ton of folks,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there was definitely a majority of the people that we saw on the trail around Artist Point and the lookover points
Mm-hmm.
for the lower and upper falls,
Well,
which
yeah,
makes sense.
because they had the parking lots right there. You could drive in.
Yeah, it's like you said. It's I don't begrudge anybody for who wants to do that. Like the accessibility of that and people getting the opportunity to be able to see that is
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. But folks like us still have the option of being able to go do a bigger hike
Mm-hmm.
and see some things that other folks weren't really able to see. Like that Sulphur Lake was really cool because it was like amazingly still.
Mm-hmm.
And it had that like light green tinge to it that just created kind of like an otherworldliness to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would see like the little
Bubble.
bubbles that were happening out around the edge. And it was just cool to see them coming up. And then the mud pot area was basically like being on a wholly different planet.
I was going to say, that was like walking to that was like walking into Mars. Like there was no grass. It was all like gravel and dirt. And then just being like, you hear something and usually everything else is like always fenced off. And you're like, you hear blah, 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 and you're like, oh, that's like just 5 feet that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like if you're not paying attention.
And there were definitely some parts where they were like, please stay on the path, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because the ground was saturated and was bubbling up that way and it was potentially very dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very cool to see all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like to be able to essentially walk that close to it and be able to see it up close and have that experience. Sometimes that experience was nauseating.
For some people.
For some people. Myself, our friend Kim.
Aaron and I.
Yeah, you and Aaron were fine.
Yeah, I did, and it wasn't crowded because you had to walk and hike it. Yeah, I mean, you had to hike into these things. It wasn't a casual walk.
No, this
So
is
it wasn't
something
crowded.
that you had to do intentionally.
Yeah,
right. And so definitely worth it. Definitely worth being able to chart that out and say, hey, there's some really cool stuff that we can go see. Let's go have a look. Let's go see how that works. We did also that other hike with Aaron and Kim. While we were in Utah up to Donut Falls. And that was nice where we were able, I was just a little 2-mile hike, 2 miles up, 2 miles back, if I remember right. Or maybe it was a mile and a half up, mile and a half back. So 3 miles, not bad. But again, nice to be able to see Donut Falls and have that as a point to go take a look at. So
I just thought of another day hike that we did.
Which one was that?
To the Jeep when we went down to Moab.
Oh, yeah, that's true. So,
Never
boy, we're really not just dipping our toes in this. Like, I think we've actually kind of been doing a lot of these.
Hang on. Yeah, we did.
Maybe we're just trying to do them more often.
I think so.
Yeah.
Do a little of our travel adventures closer to home.
Yes. I think we take a minute to talk about the hike out to Jeep Arch, which was great.
Mm-hmm.
That was when we went out to visit our friends Aaron and Kim again. Different trip. We went south this time into Utah.
Yep.
And went out and did a day hike to Jeep Arch. And again, lovely in terms of the scenery and the beauty of it. What was it? The fist?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
The fist. I can't do a fist.
Yeah, you
right
can't
now.
do the fist right now. But there was a rock formation that literally looked like a fist.
That's how we help guide ourselves on part of the
trip is okay, we got to get to the fist. Okay, now we need to walk back to the fist and things like that. But yeah, Jeep Arch was beautiful. That was that one was interesting. I think the one of the main learnings from there is like how much we were exerting ourselves and didn't even necessarily realize it.
Yeah.
By the time we got back. And this was what, a 4-mile hike?
It was a 4-mile hike. He said it was going to be our toughest hike of the weekend.
Yeah.
And we did it right away. But it was a 4-mile hike. Towards the end, to get to Jeep Arch, we had to do some climbing.
Yep. So we did have to climb up a little bit. And we were doing this in the midday to late day sun. And that hike was basically, what, 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock?
Yeah, I think so.
Something like that. And so we weren't going terribly fast, but the sun was beating down on us. And by the time we got done with that hike, I actually had no water in my pack. I drank all my water, which was good. Stayed hydrated. But that one, again, not terribly challenging, not a ton of elevation change or things like that. A little bit of climbing we had to do at a few different points. The scrubland was beautiful. Again, not somewhere where I want to live, but I can appreciate it and enjoy going there.
I agree.
Yeah. And then getting an opportunity to go sit in the arch and have a snack.
Snacks are the best part.
Snacks are a great part of hiking, so big fan. So one of the things you talked about was, the fact that we want to start doing this more regularly, and I think our most recent hike that we just did within the last couple weeks is a good example of where we're trying to do that a little bit more and really make that more a part of what we're doing regularly. So you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, so we went down to Brandywine Falls, which is in the Cuyahoga National Valley, which is close by to where we are. I've always wanted to go to the falls. It's like everyone knows about it. It's all picturesque. But it tends to be crowded on the weekends. I was off. It was one of those days I was off on a Monday. Something we didn't work. Oh, it was after that weekend that Shayla and Bernie were in town.
Yes.
So it was a Monday. Everybody was at work. So we were like, hey, let's go for a day hike. So we packed some snacks and some water in the pup-up, and we went down to Cuyahoga National Valley to do the Brandywine Falls, which was, we did a loop. I don't remember how long it was.
That loop was about 2.5 miles.
2.5 miles.
Yep.
There were parts of it where there was some rolling hills. So it was challenging.
Yeah, there's a little bit of challenge to it. You had some options as far as how you wanted to do the hike. And again, the falls are actually very accessible in terms of you don't have to go far from the parking lot to see them. Now, they're not accessible in terms of there are some pretty steep stairs that you have to be able to go down to be able to see the falls up close and personal.
Yeah, there is an overlook if you just want to do the overlook, but if you want to get down in there, that was, I think, the most challenging part, were the steps down to the falls.
Yes, the steps down to the falls, and then also some of the rolling hills that were like quite obviously like some sort of access road or something like that they had paved that they were just letting go.
Oh, that was
back
being
to
washed
the earth.
away. I forgot about the road that was like, literally being washed away.
Literally washed away because they weren't maintaining it anymore, which is cool. Like it's cool to see nature kind of taking that space back. But yeah, that little hike was great. We actually didn't really go down and visit like the falls proper until the last part of the trek, which was fine. We went and we did the overlook, and then we did the walking trail back. And once we got away from the falls, there was a few folks, but for the most part, it was fairly quiet. When we got out, I think past, maybe half a mile, something like that, where there was some turnoffs and things along those lines. By that point, we were pretty much by ourselves because we were going out and doing the longer loop. And because we were doing the longer loop and we went up that one hill and then followed the trail that went to the pond that was up there, by that point, we were all by ourselves. For a long time. Most of the folks who were doing most of the hiking were doing like the closer loops and stuff like that, or were just there to look at the falls, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah, most people turned off at where you could get kind of down by the river.
Yep.
Except for and then I think the couple with the beagle was doing the smaller loop because we saw them in the beginning and then we saw them back when we were coming around.
Yeah, and then the other nice thing that we did with that is we tested out a little bit in terms of starting to learn how to rehydrate food and do some cooking using a small portable stove. So typically when we go camping, we have a larger Coleman stove that we use that runs off of the green propane canisters, or now we've actually switched over to a larger 5-pound tank because it's a little bit more efficient, a little less wasteful, and it's a little bit cheaper overall in terms of operation. But we wanted to have something so that if we want to do these day hikes and we want to be able to pack some food out with us and be able to take some water and be able to either rehydrate or do some cooking out on the trail, we bought just a small little stove that runs off of isobutane instead. And so it was a good opportunity for us to give that a try and do some food rehydration and see how we like that.
Yeah, it was good though because we were trying that, but also in like the parking lot beginning trail area.
Correct.
So if like things went poo-poo or things had issues, like we weren't far from the car or anything else that we needed to get if we needed it.
Yeah, and if everything went south, if the stove didn't work, or if the food didn't rehydrate properly and was gross or whatever, it would have been fine.
McDonald's was like 25 minutes away from there.
Right. Like we could very easily could have gotten some other food on the way home and called it a day. So we had backup plans. Yeah. But we had an opportunity to try some of the rehydrated food and things like that. And really it was pretty good.
I can't complain about it. I don't hate it. I'd eat it again.
No, I think the one thing that we learned was to make sure that the water really is boiling all the way, like a full rolling boil when we get ready to pour it in. So
yeah, because we just used the prepared dry freeze-dried bag food.
The dehydrated meals. Yeah.
Yes, those.
Yes. So, we used the Mountain House meals and just went ahead and got those. They're the ones that are real common, and a lot of people have talked about the quality of those and things like that. And overall, I thought they were fine. I thought they were good. Again, it's rehydrated food, right? And so you're not expecting like a gourmet meal or anything along those lines. But I will say that overall it was very tasty. It was very delicious. So. Yeah. And I could see us being comfortable using those going forward, things like that, in terms of once we start to do maybe some bigger, longer hikes, or when we get to the point where we're doing like the hike in, hike out type thing, that gives us an option and we're comfortable with how to use those, how to set those up, everything like that.
Yeah, like you said, it's good to try things and shake things out in a comfortable area. Before getting in over your head. Yeah.
All right. Anything else that you would add about day hikes? Anything else you want to talk about in terms of hikes remembering all of the hikes that we've actually done?
Hang on. Have there been more hikes? Yeah. There has been more hikes.
There has been more hikes, actually. There's when we went to the Grand Canyon, we actually hiked that. We didn't
hike the Grand Canyon.
We didn't hike down into the Grand Canyon, but we hiked the southern rim for several miles.
Because
we actually did 4 miles.
The Grand Canyon is not, I was worried I'd be underwhelmed. I was not underwhelmed. I was very whelmed by the Grand Canyon, and I could have kept going.
Yes. Yeah. And that's that. I think that's one that I'd love to get back out and do it. And that's one where I think would potentially be a cool thing as maybe something that we target in the future.
Hike down to one of the camps down there?
Hike down to one of the camps down there. And maybe that's a part of what we build up to. Now, we certainly could just do a day hike or something like that. But I think either hiking down to Phantom Ranch or hiking down and actually tent camping overnight down there would be really cool. But
I agree.
We still have to build up to that.
Yeah. That's a lot of elevation.
More practice to be had.
Long-term goals.
Yes. But that was definitely a hike that we did. We did several while we were out in Utah with our friends Aaron and Kim.
Yeah, there's no more. I can't think of any more.
Okay. Well, there's going to be more in the future. So we'll have more to talk about at another point in time.
Sounds good.
Cool. Every week we like to take a moment to talk about what filled our spirit this week. Christine, what filled your spirit this week?
I am growing things in my garden.
You are
multiple things. My gardens are green. I have a raised bed garden. I have, one's like raised up off the ground, raised bed, and the other's it's kind of a raised bed on the ground. Then I have several pots, and everything is green. And, I got a little baby potato, and then I got some baby strawberries. Yeah. And I have flowers on my tomato plants. I have some sugar snap peas that are starting to go. My beets and my turnips are like right there. And this other plant that's taking off that I don't exactly remember what it is, but I think it's wild spinach.
Okay.
But my plants are like growing. So
Yeah.
I'm very excited to see all that green and growth going on in my garden.
You've been working very hard at that, so good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What has filled your spirit?
Yeah, so two things that were intertwined. So I spent a bit of time playing World of Warcraft because I do that, and was really focused on that this week. I accomplished my goal of getting another character to max level in the version that I'm playing. And then I enjoyed that by going out and touching some grass with the dog. And I took him for a walk today, which was absolutely great. In terms of just getting outside, getting a little bit of fresh air, and allowing him to get some sniffs and things like that. So that was great.
And that wraps up everything that we have to talk about this week. What is on deck for next?
So next week, we're going to talk about directing money and adjusting prepaid expenses. We're going to talk about how to have that conversation because there's a decision that Christine and I have to talk about in terms of how we want to start directing some money towards prepaying some future expenses and how we're going to decide what we want to focus on and how we want to spend our money. So we're going to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Join us then, and in the meantime, we hope you live a spirited life. The topics and information on A Spirited Life should not be taken as financial advice and should be considered for entertainment purposes only.